My name's Bicheno. A year ago here, Sophie caught me and said, "Hey, you got a job." Graham got caught the same way, and Russell was already heavily involved. So, we got the diver training program, and it was very much, it had been running for, I think, about 3 years. Work had been going on with it. A lot of work had already been done, and Sophie said, "Give me something I can be proud of. Give me something the membership can be proud of." So I tried. We'll see. I took ownership a year ago. Graham took over as project manager. I think that was her best decision that she made, was when she made Graham project manager, because he set to work. And that was what was needed, someone to really set to work to get this going. And I just started to dream a bit. As you get older, you like to have a sit down and you like to think about dreaming. So I was told, apology, just an aside, I was told I was not allowed to wear my orca jumper. Now, that orca jumper has been on me for the last 20 years. Well, actually, it has been washed once or twice, and a lot of people recognise me by it, and they took it away. So I'm in a blue shirt instead. But anyway, I started dreaming about the diver training program and about diving, and where could we go? What could we do with it? What could we do to make it exciting? So I looked at the work that had been done. I dreamt about that work. It came in. There's so much had been done, and I was part of the Dive Leader program up until that stage, so I knew a fair bit of what was happening. The surveys that were done was a big input to this. So what you wanted, and we took note of a lot of what you wanted and how things could be done. The existing DTP, well, I've been involved in it since the beginning of this version and of about 3 versions beforehand, so there was a lot of that was in my dream. Some of the bits were nightmares. Does anyone else remember Dish and Retrieve? Yeah? Yeah? Any clubs still doing it? Yeah? Glad to hear it. Looked at the problems that we've got in diving, and that included things like the incidents. There's a lot of information that's come out of the incidents that we need to be aware of. And also problems some of the branches, university branches were having about organising dives, and thought, what can we do about it? We've taken in diversity and inclusion, and diving for all again was a big input for me, because I did the course and I thought there's so much there that we can use. And then I thought about, I was also dreaming about manta rays, as you do, and then I got onto whale sharks, and I had a eureka moment. Unfortunately, someone said eureka urine, but that isn't really what should have been happening. So anyway, the existing system as it was, I tried to view it slightly differently to the way we do it now. I thought we'd have core wet skills. And we have a set of skills that, a lot of core wet skills at the beginning, and as you go up the tree and go further, the core wet skills reduce more and you start looking at other things. The core dry skills actually are against that. The dive management, dive planning, the medical things, they get more and more as we learn more. It gets bigger and bigger. So they pretty well match out as you go along. And we've also got this massive area of specialist skills that we learn. And we do a lot of work on specialist skills. There's a lot of different areas in there. And that's been expanding and expanding and expanding over the last few years. I mapped what we do now. Ocean diver, I felt sat about there. Sports diver there. Dive leader picks up a few of the specialist skills, but there's still a lot missed out. And again, with advanced diver, we pick up some. There are a lot of things that we do now that don't help towards the qualifications. What actually happens is the diver has to follow the qualification. Yeah? And I thought, is that what we really want now? So we looked at a more integrated system. So that's our grades pretty well. You might notice there's an extra one been slipped in at the bottom. It just dropped in there because it fitted so well. We've got a new grade at the bottom there of Discovery Diver you'll hear more about soon. And the main thing about that is it didn't really take us any extra work to put it there, and it will be useful, particularly within the schools and these areas that they're working in. So, core wet skills, we've still got those. They go all the way through the grades. Buoyancy, we've already drawn out. If you think about it, we've looked at that separately as well. So we've got a whole series of buoyancy workshops there. The medical rolls all the way through. Rescue and survival rolls all the way through. Again, planning and management and organisation. They're all parts that we have that are really from our core skills, things that we need to know, things we need to learn more about as we go along. And we've got a lot of other areas. This is this big area of yellow, these other training modules. And I've called them modules on purpose because that's how we started to look at all of this. So, whatever we do, we've got to learn those core skills. It is pointless going underwater till we've learned how to actually breathe through a regulator. Yeah, it doesn't really work, does it? So we need to learn core skills and the skills that come above that. Everything else, we thought, how about if we make it optional? Yeah, so you don't have to do so many things that we've got listed saying you must do this, 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 this. We say, here's a whole range of things. Why don't you pick out some of them? So you can select the rest from the experiences that you want. The skills that you need to have those experiences. And for diving that fits you. Now by you, it's the individual member, but it's also the branch. And we've looked as well at our overseas branches and thought, we're teaching them often skills that are needed in cold, low-vis, poor conditions. They're diving in very different conditions. Isn't it better that they were teaching their divers the skills that they need there, and they become part of their qualifications? So what we're trying to do is get the qualification to follow the diver. Now, in this room, I know there's a lot of people who've worked on this. Yeah? We've got a big, big team that's been making this happen. And it's a dream. So I'm hoping the teamwork will make the dream work. And we've got a real dream team working on DTP. When I've looked around the rooms at some of our meetings, I've looked around and there's hundreds of years of diving knowledge and instructor knowledge. Fantastic people sitting around that room. So I'm quite happy to sit back and dream because they're working really well to put it together. So I woke from my dream. I was lucky. I said, Graham, over to you.
Thanks, Pete. Yeah. So Pete had a dream, a vision, and, well, it was then down to myself and the team to actually make it happen. So what we actually came up with to put this into reality was a much more flexible structure, a complete new flexible structure. Mike, hold it up. Oh, sorry, right. Try that again. So we got a new flexible structure. So the foundation of which is Ocean Diver. That remains a single course, kind of quite like it is now. But from Sports Diver and beyond, we've completely modularised it. So no longer is there a Sports Diver course, a Dive Leader course, an Advanced Diver course. It is all a collection of modules. I'm going to talk more about those in a minute. But what that gives you is the flexibility to personalise the training to your needs and interests. So some place you dive, you have particular needs, and some place you're diving for your own interests. So you're not necessarily going to be forced now to do things that aren't relevant or of interest to you. The completion of a module will qualify you to undertake that skill. And that's a really powerful thing, we think. So a great example of that is ocean divers. All too often go out on hard boats at the moment and have a requirement to be able to deploy a DSMB. But in the current system, until they've completed Sports Diver, they're not technically qualified to do it. And it's broken up in their training. Here you can go off and do the DSMB module immediately after Ocean Diver, and they've trained to safely use a DSMB. Similarly, distance line. When we were looking at this, a lot of the team said, well, why do we do distance line? Nobody really uses that. I said, out in Dover we do. It's one of the first things again an ocean diver needs, because if you don't come back to that shot line, there's a pretty good chance you're going to come face to face with a cross-channel ferry. Not good. So another major change, the experience dives that we've got in there at the moment. They add some value, but there's no qualitative element to them. There's no real proof that you've done it well, there's things to learn from. It's just a tick box. So what we're now going to make them is taught modules. So there will be an instructional element to them, and you'll actually learn how to do a boat dive, a drift dive, a wall dive, and be properly taught. We're also looking at recognising specific interests and training, other training that you may have. So we're looking at ways of integrating that and recognising it and giving you credit for it. Modules will consist of a number of different things. Probably no great surprise, but it will all be in one small package. So probably some theory, possibly a dry practical or dry run if that's going to be relevant, sheltered water if that's relevant, in most cases an open water element, and a theory assessment. So no longer the daunting 60-question theory papers. It's now going to be broken up per module. Think of it in sort of size and style. We've currently got the AED workshop, we've got the buoyancy and trim workshop, and the nitrox workshop. So that's the kind of sort of size and style to be thinking of, but with quite a lot of enhancements. Now, we recognise that there are certain circumstances where this format may not entirely work well, so there's still the option of aggregating training together. So, say a university branch where it's very efficient to teach lots of people the theory together, so you can aggregate the theory from various modules together and still give large presentations, subject to them obviously being progressive. So the overall structure, I quite appreciate you won't be able to see the bits in the middle. That's semi-deliberate. The bit that's important is around the outside. So across the top, we've got grades through from Discovery Diver that Pete mentioned. That is just an interim qualification that can be issued partway through the Ocean Diver course, and Russell's going to talk more to you about that in a moment. But you'll notice then 3 large columns for Sports Diver, Dive Leader, and Advanced Diver. And down the side, we've categorised the modules into various groupings. So we start with personal skills. So these are your basics, mask clearing, reg clearing, buoyancy, the really fundamental stuff. So all of those modules will be mandatory. Rescue skills, so CBL, AS, oxygen admin, that kind of stuff. That's another grouping. And again, really critical, so they're going to be mandatory. Dive leadership, there's an element that builds up through, and we're really emphasising that more now. Again, that will be mandatory. And dive planning and management to an extent throughout. All of those will be mandatory. We've also got depth progression, so that's not really too different concept. So from you do that post-sports diver, it's listed to clarify it as a part of dive leader, because at the moment we know there's a lot of confusion that people still see it as part of sports diver when it's not. And that's going to become, again, a taught module around deeper diving. So we'll bundle together all of the theory and components around deeper diving, so gas planning, narcosis, all that kind of stuff, in one module. So all that lot up until that point is mandatory. Then becomes the interesting bit. So we've grouped them into 4 areas. Technique, so things that teach you additional skills like SMB, DSMB, line laying, and deploying a shot line, using a trapeze, things like that. There'll be a selection of modules that you can pick from and make up this pool. So you can choose the things that are of interest to you. So if you dive somewhere where you never have to use a distance line, don't do it. But if that's fundamental to the kind of diving that you do, great. We've also got what we're calling interest, so ones that aren't specific sort of personal diving skills, so things like photography, videography, marine life ID. So they build your overall skill set, but they're not really sort of personal diving skills. We then got the environment modules, so this is about wall dives, night dives, low-vis diving, cold water diving, small boat diving, large boat diving. So to get you some experience of different environments and platforms to dive from. Then from dive leader and into advanced diver, we've got leadership experience. So this is taking it from doing a drift dive, doing a wall dive, doing a night dive, to leading a drift dive, leading a wall dive, whatever. Because we found that a lot of feedback that we actually do very little teaching of dive leadership at the moment, and there was quite a demand for that. In terms of how we're building this, the great advantage is it makes it a lot simpler for us. So we were trying to build that whole column as a course, the whole sports dive thing, and that was a massive task. That's where we were getting caught up. So now what we've done, I thought Pete would quite like it. He's kind of a laid-back guy. So we had started out with his vision of the verticals. I've laid it down and made it horizontals. So we're working now as a team. So there's a team focusing on the personal skills all the way through, the rescue skills all the way through, the dive planning and management all the way through. So we're building it that way, but not only are we building it that way, we're going to give you the opportunity to do it that way. So if you want to get really good at buoyancy, as soon as you've completed Ocean Diver, you can do Buoyancy 1. Once you've done Buoyancy 1, you can move on to Buoyancy 2 and Buoyancy 3. So it's not dependent on the grade. You can follow through. So again, DSMB, if the type of diving it does demands you want to do midwater DSMB deployment, great. Ocean Diver, DSMB 1, DSMB 2. Okay. So you can follow through as a diver across ways. You don't have to just acquire a whole grade. We're moving far more to skills-based, so emphasis on skills, not lessons. So we're going to give you a menu of skills that need to be completed rather than individual specific lesson plans that you have to follow through. Again, giving greater flexibility. Each module will have a skills-based qualification record book page, so each skill will be signed off when the specific performance criteria have been given. And we will be giving much clearer guidance for each and every skill. So no longer will we have competent and confident, which is rather ambiguous, but you will now be given quite clear guidance on what is and isn't acceptable. And the key thing is it's not a case of you've done that dive, now that's it. It's a case of doing as many dives as are required to get put my teeth back in, the required performance criteria. We're aiming for the skills to be more realistic. So as Sophie mentioned earlier on, we're moving to make the skills mid-water. So beyond, Ocean Diver will stay much as is, but Sports Diver and beyond will start to introduce mid-water, because let's face it, when do you clear your mask? It's not kneeling on the bottom most of the time. You're going to be neutrally buoyant. So we'll add an element of that and progressively make it so Sports Diver, we're looking at probably doing it on a shot line, dive leader then completely neutrally buoyant and so on. We're also going to encourage, and the key is encourage, not mandate, doing training in normal diving conditions. So the nature of the modules should make it easy to integrate it into normal branch diving, and that would encourage you to go and do it in what is more your normal diving conditions. So if you do all your diving normally in the channel, doing most of your training in there, because then you've experienced it in the right conditions. Buoyancy is being really critical. That is going to be featuring in every diving module, so there will be a skill performance standard for buoyancy in every module that involves diving. And as we mentioned, there'll be per module theory, but there'll also be per module theory assessments. We're deformalising them, so we're getting rid of the circle sheet so that you just mark it on the question paper. But that's if you want to do it on paper. We're strongly encouraging that they be done verbally as the first point, and then only moving to written if you need to, again, for logistical reasons, say, that you've got a large group that you need to examine. The aim is also that because the theory is now substantially split up, that a lot of it can be done on site. So if we take the DSMB example, there's about 5 slides to go through. So we're seeing that you could do that in the car park before the dive or over a bacon butty in the CAF, whatever. But it's closer tied to the practical, rather than it being potentially months ago when you did it in a classroom and then trying to remember it, that actually you've done the theory immediately before you then go and do the practical skill. So, all this great stuff coming, you want to know when's it coming? Well, it's going to be progressive. As each module has been completed, it will be made available. The foundation for that is Ocean Diver, as we mentioned, that will be coming out in spring 2017, and there should hopefully be a number of modules with it, and they'll just start to roll out over the next probably 2 years realistically, but it will actually be an ongoing iterative cycle. And as Sophie has mentioned, they will all be available on the website. We recognise that there's going to be a period of transition required, so we're going to give 2 years from the release of all the modules that will make up a grade to complete the previous grade. So starting from spring 2017, when Ocean Dive is released, you'll have until spring 2019 to complete anyone on the previous Ocean Diver syllabus, and then once we've released all the modules that are able to make up Sports Diver, you'll have 2 years from that point. So that you can start using the new training scheme as they become available, we're going to give you guidance on what credit you can give to, say, someone who has done the SMB module, what credit you can give them back on the old 2008 training syllabus. So I'll hand over now to Russell to tell you about all the work he's been doing on Ocean Diver.
I think I've got a mic. Hi, hello. So I'm Russell Field. I've been leading the work on the Ocean Diver update. And what I wanted to do this afternoon was just take you through a few of the sort of highlights of Ocean Diver and what we've done and where we're going with it. So I think the first thing to say is that Ocean Diver has already started to take on the ethos of a modular structure. So you'll notice we're going away from the concept of lessons and dives, and they've all become modules. In practice, they probably look very similar, but we have called them modules. And it's trying to pick up, especially in the open water and the practical sections, that a particular dive, if we used to have it, may not be actually completable in one dive. So we've got a kind of a module which encompasses what's got to be completed. Now, you may be able to achieve it in one dive. You might have to achieve it in more than one dive. So we've got the concept of a module. And the news course has basically got six theory modules, 5 sheltered water modules, and 4 open water modules. So a fairly similar structure to what you've seen before, but the main difference being that we've kind of gone to this modular theme. The other thing we wanted to do with it quite a lot when we was writing it was to try and make sure that we could make it as flexible as possible for delivery by all of the different types of branches that we've got and our centres as well. So we wanted to make sure that the course was still completely tied in with the needs of branches and the fairly normal delivery method that a lot of branches have, where they do training week by week. So that's still very much supported by this. But we also wanted to make sure that the course did have the option of being delivered in a fairly intensive way over, say, a 4-day course, which may be common in maybe centres, but also some branches also train this way, where perhaps they do the course over 2 weekends, so that we could actually deliver a course in a short space of time for those that need more rapid delivery. So the idea being there that the first 2 days cover the sort of theory and sheltered water modules, while the second 2 days cover the open water modules. And the final thing we wanted to do was to look at the option of trying to, again, make the delivery even more flexible and give people the opportunity of getting into the open water more quickly. And that's where the Discovery Diver option comes in. So what we've basically done is package the materials up in such a way that you could deliver the first 3 theory modules, then the first 3 open water modules, and then jump into doing the first 3 sheltered water modules before jumping in and doing the 2 of the open water modules. And on completion of that, we give you the in-between grade of Discovery Diver. You can then roll on to complete the rest of the course in the normal way. As I said, it's an option, it's not mandatory. If you still want to carry on and deliver it in the same way you've always delivered it, and that's do all your theory, do all of your pool, then do the open water, that's fine. It's just we've created an extra option to give you an extra pathway, and in particular get people into open water more quickly where that's required. And that's something that we think will be particularly of value to some of the centres and also some of the military branches. I know when I've had conversations with them, I've had the same where they get the guys for 2 days and then they've gone again. So it's an optional thing to give people a way of getting people into the water more quickly. I'll just pay to note to the picture that we've got up there. This is sort of a very sample of an early layout of what some of the material might look like as we go forward. So what's actually new in the course? Well, I think the key thing is all of the visual aids have been completely updated. One of the other key things about it was the language that we use in the material. I've quite often said to the guys, there's quite a tendency in a lot of BSAC materials to try and teach GCSE science in some of our lessons, and clearly that we don't need to do that. We only need to teach enough to make somebody to be a good safe diver. We're not trying to get them to pass the science exam. So we've tried wherever we can, where it's practical, to simplify the language and take out technical jargon where it's not required. Clearly in lots of places around things like decompression or whatever, it's needed. But where we've had in the past quite a lot of technical language, we've tried to remove that as much as possible. We're upgrading a lot of the artwork throughout, and we're obviously replacing an awful lot of the pictures. And then one of the other things we've introduced is all of the slide packs have got actually student quizzes built in to try and make sure that we are actually doing and prompt our instructors to do that knowledge feedback during the lesson and at the end of the lesson. The instructor manual has also been fairly heavily updated. And one of the things we tried to put down into it is it was a fairly flat structure, the old instructor manual. And one of the things we always do on IFCs is spend sort of half the time trying to decode the instructor manual for the people that turn up on IFCs and try and read what the commons mean and the full stops, etc. So we've tried in it to actually break out the skills in a little bit more detail, hopefully making it a bit easier for instructors to actually pick out what perhaps the steps are in a particular skill breakdown. To give people a bit more guidance on how to teach some of these pieces. We've also, where possible, included any updates on any developments in teaching skills, be it buoyancy or mask clearing, things like that, where we've just tried to update the method of actually teaching some of these things as well. And on the student guide, we're trying very much to try and get a lot more graphical content into the student guide. If anybody's looked at the current student guide, it's quite a dry document, lots of text, not much pictures. We're trying to get a lot more pictures into that to make it a much more interesting read for our students. And as Graham alluded to, we've kind of put in the back end of the various parts of the manual much more detailed guidance on the performance standards required for each of the elements in the module to give instructors much clearer guidance on what is an acceptable standard versus what's not, rather than just saying they're competent and confident. And then the final thing probably to pick up is the content of modular assessment. So as Graham said, we are moving over to a more modular assessment approach. So each of the theory modules, we've kind of constructed a single theory paper, but it's broken up into the various sections. So you can either deliver the theory assessments as a small, short, bite-sized chunk. We're going to do, we've done theory lesson number 1, theory module number 1, and here's 5 or 6 questions to check that you understand it. Or if you, for logistical reasons, want to do it in one big group at the end, then you can do it in one big group at the end. But we've broken it up into a modular nature as well, which again I think will help people with students that struggle to get through the theory assessments. So where are we now with all of this? We've heard lots of nice words from all of us about what we're doing. So what about delivery? So a bit of a progress update. So I think on Ocean Diver we're at the place where all of the core materials are written. They all exist. We've done now quite a few pilot courses already, and there's another 2 or 3 going on at the moment, which we're just trying to finish off and get the inputs from that and find all those typos and spelling mistakes. And it doesn't matter how many times we do it, we always seem to find some more. So we're trying to get rid of as many of those as we can. Once we've got all of those back, we're kind of really getting into that final stage of doing the final proofreading now, and then it will go into the desktop publishing process and to get the final layouts applied, some of which we've been showing on the slides. These are some draft ones. I'm sure they've been updated a bit since we put these in. But it gives a bit of a flavour of what the look and feel of some of the materials might look like. So hopefully a little bit more modern and a bit more sexed up, if you like, than what we've had in the past. We're hoping to get this thing completed in the spring. I'll keep my fingers crossed for that, but that's where we're aiming for. So quite a big piece, but I think we're in reasonably good shape. We have got the materials. We're just going to drive through it, and I'm smiling to the people in the front row who've got to help us deliver this stuff. So that's kind of where we are. I think, Sophie, you're next. Yeah. So I'm going to hand over to Sophie to wrap up.
Okay, so just to conclude, because there's a lot of information in there, that there are Q&A sessions today on Ocean Diver and the way the diver training programme is going. It's really important that we want this to be easy to deliver in branch. One of the biggest things that I get asked all the time is, advanced diver, really difficult to deliver in branch, and this is supposed to take it away, but it's massively complex to put together. So I know there's going to be a lot of questions and how it works. Ocean Diver is not drastically different. We're improving the materials, we're improving the instructor notes, and we're trying to help instructors deliver it in a simpler way. So that is not drastically different. We're in the second round of trials for that now, so we are perfecting it as we go along. Do not wait to start ocean diver courses. The current ocean diver course is completely fine, and there is no point in waiting to start trainees at this point, because it's not going to be massively different, and the qualification they're going to get at the end of it is going to be the same. Please attend any of the Q&A sessions and go to the workshop. There's space in the one at the very end of the day, 22 to 23. Please go along and ask any questions at that point, because I know there will be a lot. Have a look at the materials and speak to the guys. But in the interim, what I just wanted to say is there is a huge, huge team behind this, a huge amount of work, and particularly to Pete and Graham and Russell, who have been working tirelessly on this around all their family lives on a volunteer basis. I'd just like to say thank you to them for all their work so far.